Hey everybody, it is Chainsaw Gears 12 here, and I'm back with another album review today. Today I am reviewing the new album from Sylosis entitled Monolith. Now at first, when I was going through the list of albums that were coming out, I saw the track, the thing saying Sylosis-Monolith coming out, and I said, okay, well I never heard of the band, so I kind of just skipped over it. But I went back to it because I kept looking at that title of the album entitled Monolith, and I kept going, what is this? So I listened to the album, and I'm so glad that I came back to it because this album blew me away, and you'll see why in this review. If you don't know what Sylosis is, the band is basically thrash metal, progressive metal, death metal, heavy metal, just a bunch of variety of metal thrown into it. You're going to get a lot of sense of, on this album, you're going to get a lot of thrash elements, a lot of death metal elements. You're going to get a lot of different varieties of metal thrown into one. Basically, like sounds like Evil, Trivium, early 80s stuff like Metallica, the Big Four, Exodus, Testament, stuff like that. And then newer types of metal, which is like, you hear some All That Remains type stuff, you hear some Killswitch Engage stuff. There's a lot of variety of things put into what this album is. So I'm going to go through the track listing actually, but the track listing and the personnel who played on the record are still going to be in the description, but I want to go through the track listing. There's 11 tracks on this album. There's technically 12, and you'll see why there's actually a 12th track, I'm calling it. So here we go with track listing. Out From Below, Fear the World, What Dwells Within, Behind the Sun, The River, Monolith, Paradox, A Dying Vine, All Is Not Well, Born Anew, and Enshrined. Now, Enshrined is like a 19-minute track compared to the rest of the tracks on the album, which varies between 4 minutes to 6, 7, around that area. But Enshrined is 19 minutes long. The actual song Enshrined, I think, ends at about 5, 6, 7 minutes around that area. There's a hidden track within Enshrined, the 19 minutes, it starts in about 14 minutes in, so I'm considering that to be the 12th track. So technically there's 12 tracks, but there's a huge silent period where there's no music at all, and then it jumps off into this hidden track. So basically, let's get back to what I was saying earlier about what this album is, because I think a lot of people who don't know what this band is, or just are just afraid to, like, okay, well, you know, you're saying this, but why should I go listen to this band or listen to this album in general? I feel like this album, Monolith, has a lot of moments where they're paying a lot of tribute to, like, the early 80s thrash era. They're also paying tribute to these newer death metal bands. They're paying tribute to a lot of things. They're combining a lot of elements and putting it on this record. Because when I first heard the opening actual break into the actual fast part of the song on the very opening track, I felt this sense of, like, this reminds me so much of, like, the early Metallica stuff, early, you know, Megadeth, early Slayer, early Anthrax. We're talking, even reminding me of the band Evil, which is a big thrash band that's been getting pretty popular. That's what I thought. But then, once you dig deeper into what this album is, you get a sense of more of what this band offers on top of what they're grounded on, which is basically the heavy thrash, a lot of melodic and harmony moments, and a lot of moments where you're going to go from a really fast riff to a really, you know, slow down melody type thing. You dig deeper and you really experience and you really get this feeling of what this band is throwing at you on this record. Because what I got out of this record was so much and way more than I expected when I went into the record. Because when I went into this record, I was expecting a typical band that sounds like any other band that I've heard before. But this band sounds a lot more, they have a lot more original material, I would say, on this record than I've heard bands this past year or years before that, like, I went into without really knowing what the band was and coming out going, well, that sounds like, you know, this band, or there's a lot of material that just sounds like not original, like they kind of just took someone else's idea and kind of just did little changes to it. But when I heard this album, it gave me so much more of what I didn't expect, because after hearing this album, I went back and listened to their earlier work, and I was just amazed that I've not heard of this band before. This album, Monolith, gives you more than just a thrash record. It gives you more than just a straight death metal record. It gives you more than just a straight progressive metal record. It gives you just more of everything, because there's more types of metal thrown in there that it's kind of hard to exactly where to place this album. but there's a lot of thrash, death metal, a lot of progressive metal. There's a lot of variety of metal thrown in. So going from one song to one song, sometimes you might not be able to tell how the song is going to go, because the intro to the song might have nothing to do with what the rest of the song is going to give you, because each song on this album sounded different in a way. Sometimes they had some of the same elements, but they were placed differently, or there was a lot more aggression on this track compared to the next track. Each song had something different to give you because there's so many elements on this album. I was really blown away by the guitar solos. I was really blown away by the guitar work on this album because, like I said, I went in this album not really knowing the band, and I came out just amazed about how amazing the guitar work on this album is, how much thought must have went into writing the riffs, writing the guitar harmony parts, writing the solos, writing the clean sections, writing the really beautiful sections that like really slow down and melodies just going beautifully, and you're just really sitting back and just amazed by, you just came out of this really fast riff and now you're listening to this like really amazing guitar harmonizing solo bits. I mean, there's so much thought that probably went into writing the guitars on this record. Same for the bass. The bass wasn't really featured a lot on this album, but I could tell that the bassist was following the guitars, and following the guitars on this record is pretty impressive because, it, like I said, it switches off from a really fast-paced thrash riff to a really heavy metal riff, then we go into a more melodic type thing, and then we go back into a really fast thrash riff. There's a lot of just musical changes as it goes on. The vocalist on this album, you're going to get a lot of screams, a lot of growling. It's not like, you know, really low growling. You can actually understand some of the lyrics. If you're not really good in understanding what the death growl vocalist will say, you'll probably understand more of what this vocalist is saying on this record compared to other bands that are really like low growling. Like, you can't really understand what Cannibal Corpse's vocalist is saying, but you can probably understand what All That Remains vocalist is saying. He's kind of like that. The vocalist on this album is kind of like that. The vocalist for this band, you can actually understand a lot more lyrics, and I felt like that the vocalist was really good on this album. There's a lot of variety of lyrical content. There's just a variety of his vocal range that he could do. And then there was some actual clean singing on this album as well, which really caught me by surprise, and it was good. To the drumming really amazed me. The drummer had a variety of style too, on top of what the guitars and the bass were doing, because we had a lot of the thrash style of drumming, then we have some straight death metal, heavy metal style of writing of drumming. I mean, there was a variety of drumming going on top of the guitars and bass, so it wasn't just the guitars adding a variety of things, there was also a variety of style of drumming being thrown on this album. Production quality on this album is pretty good. It's basically what you expect out of a thrash type record, which basically really it shows off a lot of the guitar parts. You can hear the bass, the drumming fits well, the vocalist, everything seemed fit for a thrash type album. There's nothing really negative to say about this album, really. If you're not really a fan of like a bunch of variety of metal being thrown in together, and basically you don't know what's going to happen in the next part of the song or the transition, because you're not really sure, because there's so much different transitions going on this album, that if you're not really into that, then this album isn't really for you. But if you're a fan of Evil, you're a fan of the thrash era, you know, the Big Four, Exodus, Testament, Overkill, you're a fan of I don't know, you're a fan of like the newer stuff, All That Remains, Killswitch Engage, Trivium, you're a fan of those type of bands, you're a fan of August Burns Red, I mean, stuff like that, then you're going to enjoy this record, I would think, because it has so much elements going into it, and you get so much out of it. You get so much feeling of what this band is, and basically for me, I'm waiting for the next record, because this record blew me away. So I'm just waiting for what Sylosis does next, because Monolith, I think, set the tone for what this band can accomplish later on, because they've had some amazing past work, don't get me wrong, but I think Monolith is an album that really stands out on their discography, because there's so much variety going on here that it just blew me away, and I'm so glad I reviewed this album, because it's an amazing album. If I had to give a rating for it, I'd have to give it a good 9 out of 10. There's nothing really negative to say, but some people might not enjoy it because there's so much variety going on. But if you're into that stuff, or you love the 80s type thrash stuff, you love a variety of metal being thrown in, you just love hearing a variety of stuff thrown into a variety of metal, throwing into making a good quality album, then check out Sylosis Monolith album. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like the video. And if you like me and you like my reviews, subscribe for more metal videos. And I'll see you guys soon.